Go. This one? Okay. Is this one? Okay. Try saying something.
Hello?
Is it better? You can, okay. You guys can hear that? Okay, wait, say something again.
Hi.
Okay, that's good. What? I can't, okay, try again.
Hi. Hello.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Okay. You can. Oh, no, I know. Sorry, I'm going here. Okay. Yeah, we're good. We're good? Okay. All right. Hello. Thank you guys for coming. My name is Amsalech, and well, I've been thinking about like why I wanted to do this event and kind of being like feeling like I, one like questioning just like if I should do it because I have felt that, it's something that is like I feel like a broken record talking about it. Like similar things over and over again, and like maybe like there's a lot of resources to find out about adoption. So, but I realized when I was talking with a friend that, an adoptee usually goes through a lot of just telling people again and again something that for them to be able to understand just the weight of adoption and how much it truly affects them. And that can be a really frustrating process of telling people the same thing, but it really not sticking. So I feel like I want to hold these events to raise awareness about adoption and international adoption, and so people can understand the misconceptions of international transracial adoption specifically. So tonight, the first video is going to be that you guys are going to see is a short documentary I received from my adoption agency, Children, Home Society, and Family Services, which is also CHSFS. And this is of my life at the orphanage. I have edited in videos of me at the orphanage that my adoptive family took, so you'll see those in there too. But a little background just to get you guys caught up is CHSFS is a transplanted business by adoption agency from Minnesota, and so they're called Children's Home Society and Lutheran Social Services, and like that's their full name. They were founded in 1989, and they began their international adoption services in the mid 1950s. So, but then in 1990, they expanded to 12 different countries, and Ethiopia being one of them. And a BBC article from 2010 reported a dramatic rise in adoptions from Africa. The African Child Policy Forum, based in Addis Ababa, said more than 41,000 African children have been adopted and taken out of their home countries since 2004. So more than two-thirds of the total in 2009 and 2010 were adopted from Ethiopia. And in 2011, Ethiopia came second only to China, filing more international adoptions than any other country. So moreover, a reported 70 adoption agencies were established in Ethiopia, and 15 of them only referred children to families in the US. So there have been a lot of adoptees that have been adopted to the US, and it's been one of the main countries that have participated in that. So I've been trying to find information on my adoption agency and like what happened like in Ethiopia and what happened, when did they shut down, who worked there, things like that. But it's really hard to find, and I think that's been a really puzzling thing for me because I've been wondering why it's not easily accessible. So yeah, so with that background information, I present to you my adoption story. So yeah, please enjoy. Thank you for coming.
Dear Amsalech, this documentary was filmed by the orphanage where you were first admitted. This is the requirement of CHSFS Ethiopia. We, the staff at CHSFS Ethiopia, had the pleasure and privilege of being directly involved in the script writing and editing of your documentary. We hope the documentary film, which we call Video Life Book, will help you know your background in Ethiopian heritage.
The importance of the preservation and collection of information regarding a child's origin and identity are clearly stated in international conventions on the rights of a child. As stipulated by the conventions, this information should be made accessible to each child. Article 30, sub-article of the Convention on Protection of Children and Cooperation in respect of intercountry adoption says, the competent authorities of a contracting state shall ensure that information held by them concerning the child's origin, in particular information concerning the identity of his or her parents, as well as the medical history, is preserved. Sub-Article 2 of the same article says they shall ensure that the child or his or her representative has access to such information.
The preparation of a life book and a documentary for each child adopted through CHSFS Ethiopia is the initiative of CHSFS Regional Director for Africa, Amsalech Burke. This initiative is the first of its kind in world adoption history. CHSFS Ethiopia requires that orphanages produce a documentary on the background of children that are going to be adopted, and it provides technical assistance to help them produce the documentary films. Adopted children need to know their identity. He hopes this video life book will answer several questions adopted children raise concerning their background and other facts about their birth country and culture. Amsalech, you were born on October 13, 2002 at a place called Gofare in Tambaro district. Tambaro is a district found in Kambata Tambaro zone. The capital of Tambaro district, Mudula, is the nearest town to your birthplace. Tambaro has a warm climate. The people in the area speak Tambarsa. Most people who live in Tambaro are farmers. Among a variety of other crops, they grow coffee, ginger, sugarcane, and inset, a plant known in English as false banana. The film crew went to your birthplace during the rainy season. The weather was misty on the day they arrived there. This small hut serves as a grain store. In the backyard, there are corn and inset growing. At your birthplace, Most families grow insect in their backyard farm as it is the staple diet of the area. The inside of the hut is separated into two sides by a mud wall. Plates made from a special kind of straw known as safed are hanging on the wall. The Amharic alphabet is posted on the wall. An umbrella is hung on the pillar of the hut. This is the corner where your birth family members sleep. The bed is made of wood and insect leaves are piled on it as a mattress. Some of the family's clothes are hanging on a rope above the bed. Your birth family keeps their cattle at one corner. Here at your birthplace, cows and other animals are kept indoors for a good part of the day and all night long for three reasons. First, they're protected from wild animals and thieves. Second, they can be fed well. And third, their dung can be collected easily and can be used as a natural fertilizer. This is your birth father, the Salin Sebro. The Saling is the one who tends to his backyard farm. He is now digging in the backyard, which is covered with weeds. He feeds the weeds to the cattle in the hut. When the film crew interviewed the Saling, it was conducted via a translator, since the journalist doesn't speak Ambarsa, the language the Saling speaks.
እናቴ በመሞቷ ምክንያት ነው ማሳደግ ስላቃተኝ ኢትሲያለም ጠንሞጉሙ በጤና ጠንሞጉሙ አበራውስ የሮሰም ሊሴን ጠንሞጉሙ ያን መንግስትና ድርጅትን ድርጅትን ወቁሙ ድርጅት ሊሶን ተማሰና አው ማለት ከምን ነው ቡጦ መጥርችን በኒ ቡጦ በጣም እንደን ሄድ ኮቻገራማ ብዙ ድህነት አለብኝ እና የእርሻ መሬትም ተስማሚ አይደለም በሬዎችም ያሉኝን የእርሻ መሬት አርሼ ዘርዘርቼ ማግኘት ጥቂት ምርት ነው ያ ምርት ደግሞ ለብዙ ቤተሰብ ለቀለብ አይሆንም ከዚህ የድህነት የረሃብ ችግር አለብኝ
Amsalech, your birth mother, Bakalesh Pinero, died of diabetes on December 6, 2006. Your biological siblings are not old enough to look after you. Your birth father had to continue working to provide for the family. The Saling placed you in the orphanage because he had no one to help raise you. He didn't want you to stay with him and suffer. And he knew that the orphanage could help you meet with loving and caring adoptive family.
እንጋን ወላዩ እኮ ሁለት እርሻ መሬት አለኝ ምን ታበቅልበታለህ ወርቸው ይተከሙክ አለስቸው በኩልቸው ወሲ ከመቲ ይሄን ነው ወሽን ባንሶ እዚህ ካመረትከው ምርት ውስጥ ምን ለገበያ ታቀርባለህ ከውጣከዋንስ እንጋን ነው የሚርፍስ ተከሙ ቀለምን ጠናው ፊሶም ገበያ ለማዋል አልችልም ምክንያቱም ትንሽ ምርት ነው ለቀለብ እንኳን የማይበቃ ነው
በቀን ውስጥ አንተና ቤተሰቡ እስቲ ምን ያህል ትመገባላችሁ በቀን?
መስባለን መኮሬ ሁርባቴ ሴት ተከሙ ከነው ይክንዶሲ
በሪቡናንጎም ባላን ዋስንታም ማሮዲም ዋስ ቁርሲንታም ኤደንኮም በዳጣው ያንን ጋር ነው ብሮበል
ጠዋት ቁርስ እናገኛለን፣ ቀንም ምሳ እናገኛለን፣ ካጠንም እንደወለን ማታ እናገኛለን። አንዳንድ ጊዜ ጾማችንን የምናድርበት ቀን ይኖራል። ስለዚህ በአማካይ 2 ጊዜ እንመገባለን።
እስቲ ምንድነው የምትመገቡት? የምትመገቡትን ምግብ አይነት እስቲ ግለጽልኝ።
አረጋም የሚጠቀም እርባት አይነት መሮች
በቆሌ ቂጣ ወሳሳ
ቂጣ እና ቆጮና አምቾ መሳሰሉትን ነው።
Amsalech, in English, your name means resemblance.
የልጅን ስም ማን ያወጣል? እስቲ ስለዚህ ነገርን
ጂልቾ ሱም ፊስኮ ቀየት ማና ፊስኮ የዳኮክ
አምሳለች የተቋመት አምለቦኮ ኤስለቦኮ ይታ አምስቶ ኤስለቦኮ አምሳለች ይታ
አንተ ጋር እያለች አምሳለች ምን ነበር የምትመገበው? እስቲ የምትመገበውን ነገር በደንብ ዘርዘር አድርገህ ንገረን።
ሊያት ተምኑ ተናም ሊያት ቻ ሜሪን ስም ቀባዳ ዳብ መሰውም መተት ባለ ሹሩክቹ መሰውም ሊጦ ማማ እሶም
ዳቦም ይሰጣታል። አንዳንድ ቀን ሽሮ እሷን ለመንከባከብ እናት የሞተችባት ስለሆነ እንዳታዝን እንዳትከሳብኝ ከገበያ ሸምቼም እንደዚህ ሽሮ፣ እንጀራ፣ ዳቦ ገዝቼ ወስጄ እመግባታለሁ።
እናቷ ከዚህ ዓለም በሞት ከተለየች በኋላ ማን ነበር ሲንከባከባት የነበረው?
አምለ ተለሰግጄ ልጅ አቦዩ እኮ አያንገነ የለው
ያንጋ ዮአነት ያቦ የቆም ሜሪ ቀባጣንሳ ከረባጣውን ካኒ ከረባጥሙ ኢሰን ቀባዳ መስሙያ
እኔው ነኝ ተንከባከብኳት። አንዳንድ ቀን የጉልበት ስራ የቀን ስራ ሰርቼ በማገኘው ገንዘብ ከከተማ ወጣ ብዬ ዳቦም እንጀራም የተገኘውን ለሷ የሚስማማውን ነገር እየገዛውላት ወስጄ በዚህ እኔ ነኝ የተንከባከብኳት።
እስቲ ስለ አምሳለች ጸባይ እስቲ ዘርዘር አድርገህ ንገረን። ምን አይነት ጸባይ አላት?
እኔን
ተሞዩ ውድ ታውማን መተተማን ዋሶፈውማን ሲባቴን ከም ውልቴን ከም ኤከም ኢን ኦሶፈን ብኪን አኒ እበላ ህየሳ ኢን ማንም አባዩ ይምበን ኢዩን ጎዳዋን መጠን ብኪን ኤሲ ተምኮርሱን ቁሙ ጨዋቃው ይሰሙ ውልተማሪ ቃው ይሰሙ ኤቦሞ የውልታማን ማሉ ወባ ወመመን ውተሙ ይሄ በጥም ሳንት ቢስ ማትብሩ ወመማ ለሊቱ በቃ ይጥተሙ አራቂቶም ባላ ሶር ኮር ኮርሶን ቆ ሆሬ ኦክም ፈኩይ ኦክም ፈኩይ ባላ ኦን ኮር ሶር ኮርሶን ቆ ሀፈኩይ በጣም ውስጥ ያለ ብክር
በጣም ነው የሚወዳት። በአንድ ቀን ውስጥ 4-5 ነው ከየትኩበት ተመልሼ እየመጣው የምስማት የማጫውታት። በጣም ነው የምንከባከባት፣ በጣም ነው የሚወዳት። ምክንያቱም ልጆችም በቁጥር አናሳ ናቸው። ስለዚህ እችም ልጅ እናት ስለሞተች ከዛም እንዳትጎዳብኝ እንዳትሞትብኝ በቃ በጣም ነው የሚወዳት እና በቀን 4-5 ስማታለሁ፣ እወዳታለሁ።
ጠዶን ሊለው የኢትዮጵያ ቋንቋ ትምህርት የኢትዮጵያ ቋንቋ ትምህርት ለቆን ሊሎታ አሰውሙ ኤዲ ጠዶን ሊሎታ አሰውሙ የኢትዮጵያ ቋንቋ ትምህርት ኤክ ጠዶን ሊሎታ አሰውሙ ነው።
አምሳለች ባለችበት ከአሳዳጊዎቿ ጋር ስትኖር የኢትዮጵያን ቋንቋ በተቻለ መጠን ባትረሳ የምትማርበት ሁኔታ ቢመቻችላት፣ የኢትዮጵያንም ባህል ባትረሳ በእንዲህ አይነት ሁኔታ ብታድግልኝ ደስ ይለኛል።
He left for the US in the year 2000 according to the Ethiopian calendar. The head office of Children's Home Society and Family Services, CHSFS Ethiopia, is found in Addis Ababa. This organization is working under Children's Home Society and Family Services in the United States with the goal of helping children. The birth parents and relatives of some of the children decided to place them while others are found abandoned by their parents who are in a very difficult situation to raise them. Most of the children come from the South Regional State of Ethiopia. CHSF an outstanding childcare service in a home-like environment. There are 2 doctors and 10 nurses working at the care center. They are always busy taking care of the children and treating the sick and malnourished ones. As soon as they arrive at the CHSFS Addis Ababa Foster Care Center, the children undergo general medical checkup. If they are in good health, they join the other children according to their age groups. There are 80 nannies that care for the children. They make sure that the children are well fed, clean, and happy. They love them and give them a lot of attention. Amsalech, you were born on October 13, 2002 at a place called Gofare in Tambaro district. Tambaro is a district found in Kambata Tambaro zone of the South Regional State of Ethiopia. You arrived at the CHSFS Foster Care Center in Addis Ababa on May 23, 2008. Upon your arrival, you were admitted to the center's clinic in the Alayu building for a general medical examination. You stayed in the special care unit for 2 weeks. This is a standard procedure for all children when they first arrive. You then join the school-age children at the home for the school-age children.
እግዚአብሔርም ብርሃን ይሁን አለ፣ ብርሃንም ሆነ። እግዚአብሔር ብርሃን መልካም እንደሆነ አየ። እግዚአብሔር ብርሃንና ጨለማን ለየ።
እኔ ብርሃኔ ከበደ እባላለሁ። የአምሳለች ናኒ ነኝ። ከመጣችበት ጊዜ ጀምሮ እስካሁን ጊዜ ድረስ አብረን ነው ያለነው፣ አልተለያየንም። በዚህም በጣም ደስ ይለኛል። ምክንያቱም ከጅማሬ ጀምሮ እስካሁን እስከምትሄድበት ጊዜ ድረስ አብሬያት በመሆኔ በጣም ደስ ብሎኛል እና በጣም ነው የምወዳት። እሷም ትወደኛለች። በጣም ጥሩ ልጅ ናት። ብዙ ራሷን የምትችልባቸው ነገሮች አሉ። ለምሳሌ ልብሷን ከሰጠናት ልብሷን ትለብሳለች፣ ጫማዋን ታደርጋለች፣ እንደገና ጥርሷ ትቦርሻለች። ብዙ ነገሮችን በማድረግ በቃ እንዳወቀ ልጅ ነው እንትን የምትለው። አብረን ባሳለፍንበት ጊዜ ሁሉ በጣም ነው የምንቀራረበው፣ በጣም ነው የምወዳት። እንደገና ደግሞ ከልጆች ጋር ብዙ ጊዜ ትጫወታለች። ከትንንሾችም ከሷ ከፍ ከሚሉትም ከእኩያዎቿም ጋር ብዙ ትጫወታለች። እንደገና ደግሞ ብዙ ጊዜ ሀሳቧን ደግሞ የሆነ መከፋቷን የምትገልጸው በማኩረፍ ነው። ከከፋም ታለቅሳለች። ከዛ በተረፈ ግን ብዙ ጊዜ የሚንጸባረቀው አኩረፍ ነው። ታኮርፋለች እስከምናናግራት ድረስ ችግሯን ጠይቀን እስክንሰማ ድረስ አኩርፋ ቁጭ ነው የምትለው። በቃ ምንም ነገር አታደርግም። ከዛ በቃ አባብለን ከዛ በኋላ ትመለሳለች እና በዛ ላይ ደግሞ አንድ የወደደችውን ሰው ሌላ ሰው አብሮ እንዲሆን እንትን አትፈልግም። ትቀናለች ማለት ለብቻዋ ሀሳብ ሰተን ከብቻዋ ጋር ከሷ ጋር ጊዜ እንድናሳልፍ ትፈልጋለች እና ፍቅር ነው በቃ የምትፈልገው። ሌላ ምንም የምትፈልገው ነገር የለም። ምግብ ላይም ደግሞ ብዙ አታስቸግርም። ይሄን ያህል ብዙ እንትን ያላት ባትሆንም እንኳ ደህና ነው ላለው ኖርማል ነው ምግብ አበላሏ። በተረፈ ደስተኛ ልጅ ናት። በጣም የምትወደድ ልጅ ናት። ጸባይ ያላት ልጅ ናት። ትነቃለች፣ ትነሳለች። በቃ ንቁ ናት። መጫወቻም ላይ ያው ደስ ያላትን አሻንጉሊት ወይ መኪና ይዛ ትጫወታለች። ግን ብዙ እንደዚህ ከእኩዮቿ ጋራ የግሩፕ ጨዋታ ትወዳለች። ሁልጊዜ የማይረሳኝ ምንድነው ጠዋት ጠዋት ስራ ስገባ ወይም ማታም ቢሆን እጇን ዘርግታ በሩጫ ትመጣለች እና አቅፋ ትስማለች። በጣም ነው የምወዳት ከልብ በእውነት በጣም ነው የምወዳት እቺ እና እግዚአብሔር በሄደችበት ሁሉ እግዚአብሔር ከሷ ጋር ይሁን። የሚመጡትንም ቤተሰቦቿን እግዚአብሔር ይባርክ፣ ድርጅቱንም እግዚአብሔር ይባርክ እላለሁ።
Nicolò e che uliciuco ulicena a sole le tuia lo sena oko wamo kote Nicolò oko wamo kote Nicolò e che uliciuco ulicena a sole le tuia lo sena seri Yesus kula mencapai mu uli kula sampai mana
ታው በኝ ሳምኝ እኔ
ባይ ባይ በል እስቲ ባይ ባይ ማለታችሁ ባይ ባይ
ኦሮምኛ ምንጨፍር በየሀገራችን ባህል ኦሮምኛ ምንጨፍር በየሀገራችን ባህል
ሳምሪ
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Good morning.
Good morning,
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
How many days are in the week? Good. What are they?
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Good. Clap your hands. ስሜ የእርሷ እንድሪያስ ይባላል። የአምሳለች አስተማሪ ነኝ። አምሳለች ክፍል ውስጥ ደስ የሚል ባህሪ ያላት ማለት አትረብሽም፣ የሚደረጉ ነገሮችን በስርዓት ታደርጋለች፣ ጽፋለች፣ የሚሰጣትን ነገር ትሬስ ታደርጋለች፣ የሚባለውን ነገር ትላለች። ከለር ስታደርግ በጣም ጎበዝ ናት። ያ ብዙ ጊዜ ዝም ነው የምትለው፣ ጸጥ ትላለች ምናምን፣ ግን የምታውቀውን ነገር የትኛውንም ነገር ለመመለስ በጣም ዝግጁ ናት። ከልጆች ጋር በጣም መፎካከር ትወዳለች። እግዚአብሔር የሚወዳት እሷ እግዚአብሔርን በጣም የምትወድ ለቤተሰቦቿ ታዛዥ ለቤተሰቦቿ በረከት እግዚአብሔር እንዲያደርጋት የዘወትር ምኞቴ ነው። በትምህርቷ በህይወቷ ሁሉ መልካም ነገር እንዲገጥማት በሄደችበት ሁሉ እግዚአብሔር አብሯት እንዲሆን መልካም ምኞቴ ነው። እሺ
Hey, Keith. You're an Ethiopian, man. Madison, tell us. How was the flight?
It's very long.
Yeah?
And tiring. But fun.
26 hours. 26 in the plane. We're not done, though. Words of wisdom to soon adopting families about the trip.
It's not for the faint of heart, but it's going to be wonderful. There's been joyous moments and very troubling, not troubling, scary. But it's been I really have felt that God is with us.
We've been thinking about you for a long time, reading about you, and we want very much to add you to our family.
And speaking of family, let's meet the first. Well, Seth, we're very excited to meet you.
Yes.
Anticipating your arrival. Been waiting for you for a long time. We already love you. And we're glad to meet you.
Very excited.
Yes. And actually, Alyssa, it was my sister that got this. It's all because of us.
What are you doing? How are you doing?
Hello.
Nice to meet you.
How are you? You're beautiful. Hello, sweetie.
Oh, wow, we finally made it.
Yep, we did. Amazing. And there's the two kids. The three kids.
Yay, Amsa! Yay, Amsa! Tagabu! Tagabu! Amsa! Amsalech! Amsalech! Thank you, Tagabu. I'm a Saganalo.
Thank you for coming here today, and God bless you for coming all the way to Ethiopia to take these kids, to love them and care for them as your own. It's our greatest joy to see these children find families. We believe that every child deserves to be raised in a loving and caring family, because it's also our belief that no child came to this world by accident, but by God's will and plan. So God bless you. And we all know that children are our future, and they need to be raised to be caring, responsible adults. We encourage you to raise them as bicultural children, as an American and as an Ethiopian. Help them not to forget about their heritage. That's all we'd like to say. If there's anyone who'd like to say anything, I want to give a chance.
For all the love you've shown our children. They're happy, healthy, wonderful children. And I promise to take care of Miret and always remember that she's a proud Ethiopian girl.
Keep Ethiopia in our hearts and bring back peace. It's so clear how loved the kids are here. I feel so lucky to be able to be part of your world, to bring our world together. Thank you very much for that.
We'd like to pray for we would like the children to make handprints. We want them to make handprints because we want them to leave something behind as a reminder. They used to make handprints on this wall, but it's no more convenient, so we have prepared hard paper for them. So I'm going to call their name according to their alphabet. The oldest children here to cut the cake on behalf of all the other children. Teşekkürler. Koy. Así.
She even has a little nipple on her elbow.
Okay. Okay. So that's all that most people know about transracial and national adoption. They know that parents go into another country like saints to save the orphan, and they take them back to their countries. And then what happens after that is kind of left unknown. And everything that happens behind the closed doors of that new family is often like unsaid. And so the next video shows what might happen and what has happened in some cases after the finalization of that. And it's a clip from a documentary called Unwanted in America. And it's a documentary about an investigation into horrifying international adoption stories. And it's made by Dan Rather, which is a former CBS News anchor. But before then, I wanted to read a little excerpt from Lions Roaring Far From Home. It's a book, it's an anthology by Ethiopian adoptees. And so it has, all these stories from Ethiopian adoptees from all over the world. And this one passage is actually by Heran Tedesi, which is an Ethiopian adoptee from adopted to the Netherlands, and she actually repatriated to Ethiopia and has a yoga studio there. And so she wrote this, and I thought it fit perfectly with what we're gonna watch next. She said it's called Intangible Longing. I listen and gaze into my memories, blind nostalgia staring back at me, tracing back the footsteps of my soul. I taste the bittersweet tazita of what was once my home, stolen and stripped of all I've ever loved and all I've ever known, only to be left feeling alone. My heart scarred, leaving a hole. I endlessly try to fulfill my soul with the pieces of my new life, but they just won't fit.
This is Hannah. Hannah's a little bit emotional. She's done this before. Hannah, how old are you? 10 years old. And what grade are you in at school? Grade 7, good.
In the world of international adoption, there may be no more tragic story than that of Hannah Williams, who lived near Seattle, Washington. The young girl was adopted to this country from Ethiopia in 2008 when she was 10 years old. But on May 11, 2011, Hannah was found dead in her backyard. She had bruises on her body where she had been beaten, but that's not what killed her. Hannah's parents had starved her to death. They were convicted and sentenced for the crime. The mother was put away for 37 years and the father for 28. Hannah's adoption was facilitated by AAI, Adoption Advocates International. While that agency helped bring thousands of children here from around the world, it shut down after Hannah's story came to light. The agency was based in the Seattle area and was one of the first in the U.S. to put through adoptions of Ethiopian children. But there is another adoption tale involving children brought here by AAI that some adoption experts say is equally as stunning as Hannah's story. Some of these adoptees have ended up homeless. One of them is Belanish Hain.
It just made me feel like I'm this horrible kid nobody wants. Like, that's how I felt like. One thing that I always wanted was a parent, somebody who could be a mother figure to me.
And Miss Rock and Stella and Amanel and Thomas.
I always say that I am a mother to many, not T-O-O, but T-O.
Belanish is the adopted daughter of Richard and Julia Hain. Their desire to help children has been featured on local newscasts that say they have 28 adopted children, most of them from Ethiopia.
And I'm Abraham.
And people say, oh, it's such a great thing you do. And I say, oh, no, it's such a great thing I get to do. It is so wonderful.
People think she's this perfect mom who brings this orphan kids. It's not like that. People think she's like a Mother Teresa, but she's not.
The children say life at home was very different than it appeared to the outside world.
The hitting went a lot, and they try to be very sneaky about it. There's some days I don't feel safe at the house. A lot of days, because out of nowhere she'll come and we don't know whether she's in a good mood or not, and she just takes her anger out on me.
Several people called Child Protective Services on Belanish's behalf, including a teacher who recalled Belanish trembling anytime she mentioned her adoptive mother's name. Belanish tried to run away from home on many occasions, and eventually at age 15, her mother left her at a homeless shelter.
It just felt like I wasn't wanted by her, so thanks. And basically she just gave me away to them.
The one place that Belanish found refuge from her adoptive family is a small Ethiopian church where she confided in the pastor.
These are children with no voice. I have to do what I have to do. And it was sad because the very family that brought them here was the one that was victimizing them.
Pastor Baranu insisted that we meet an older brother whose situation is even worse. He lives in Everett, a city in the suburbs of Seattle that has one of the highest crime rates in the state.
It's basically my belonging. There's a blanket. That's my friend's backpack.
This is Abe Hain, Belanish's older brother. He sleeps here every night, next to a busy highway, along with many of the city's drug addicts.
I don't feel safe sleeping on the street, but it's what I can do right now.
Abe is 23 years old, and he's been homeless for the past year.
on the street. I walk a lot, think a lot, I worry a lot. My head just spins. I get migraine like constantly. My chest, my neck, my whole body. I can't stand. It's just weak.
He comes to a cemetery for peace and quiet and to escape the stress of life on the streets. How did Abe get here? That's him in the news clip from 2009. It's been a long and complicated road, but Abe says life with the Haynes was hell.
My dad would sit on top of my sister and just, pull her hair back, and my mom would smack her around. And yeah, I wish I would have done some, because she means a lot to me. That's my youngest sister.
One day, Abe says, he called 911, and after that, he says his relationship with his adoptive mother went downhill. Several months later, she accused him of having sex with an adopted sister.
Well, this happened. I was getting ready to go to school. I was in the shower, and my dad knocked on the door and saying, the cops want to talk to you. And I said, okay. So I dressed up, and I'm about to go to school. I'm junior in high school. So I go upstairs. The first thing the cop told me was, you touch your sister inappropriate. That's what he told me.
Abe admitted that he touched her breasts and behind, but insisted they never had sex. The two were not biologically related at the time he was 17 and she was 14.
He's not a criminal. I have seen bad kids. And as a 17-year-old boy, staying in a house where there are about 30 children taking care of themselves with no parents around, if young men, young girls are staying there, things like this happen.
There was no physical evidence linking him to the crime. But Abe says he was scared of going to prison for a long time, so he pled guilty to a lesser charge.
I didn't know what's going on. I had a public attender saying this is what I could do, and it's told me sign this paper and everything will be all right. So I don't know what's going on. I signed the paper.
Abe was charged as an adult and served 14 months in prison. When he got out, he had nowhere to turn. He now had a criminal record and was a registered sex offender. His only option was sleeping on the streets.
When an adoption is going awry and a family is trying to figure out what they're going to do, they will oftentimes discover that doing a voluntary relinquishment of the child into, say, foster care will sometimes require that they pay child support or have an expense of some kind. Conversely, if they make a criminal allegation against the child for assault or some other kind of misconduct, there's no expense attached to that. So making an allegation, especially of sexual misconduct, has become sort of a hot button way to make everything go away, because immediately the child is either in the juvenile justice system or the criminal justice system. There's no expense involved, and it's over. And I've seen it used as a technique over and over again.
No one has accused the Haynes of using this tactic to get rid of their children, but we reached out to Julia and Richard Haynes for comment. They declined, but the local precinct had a lot to show us. Police reports from the Haynes house total 130 pages. Everything from alleged beatings to suicide attempts and, quote, child currently locked by deadbolt in their room with plywood covering the windows. Maureen Flatley believes that the Haynes' multiple adoptions should never have been allowed.
How much supervision were those kids getting? You have kids that certainly in a family like that don't have any biological connection to each other. So they're not thinking brother and sister, they're just thinking boy and girl. And now the young man who was accused of the activity is a convicted sex offender, is, effectively homeless, and probably really didn't have a clear understanding of what was going on. So, is it really fair that he's been cast out the way he has?
I feel like, why is this happening to me? I lost my family. I came here, I got discharged, and Now I'm on the street, and I don't know what's gonna happen next. It's just what I'm going through. No one should be ever going through.
When I goes there and I see him, it tears me up because it's not him. That's not his character. It just hurts me because I know who he is, and it hurts a lot to see him going through that, sleeping on the street. I worry a lot, like what if somebody hurts him one day, you know?
He's a lot different than he used to be. He used to have more spirit. He used to be one of the best soccer players at Woodway. And now seeing him the way he is, I'm like, what's my future gonna be like? So.
And you still have the same address?
Yeah, just put a number of the 70.
Samuel Hain is 17 years old.
I need to have references.
The children say he will become the 9th adopted child to get kicked out of the Hain house.
Sometimes I go at night, then just there's a park by our house. I sleep there because maybe I might be homeless, and I want to get the feeling of how that feels like, you know. Nothing else about it. I don't know what the future is going to hold for me, and if being homeless is one of the things, and I want to be prepared, you know. I like being prepared for what's coming up.
Samuel was also adopted from Ethiopia and grew up in the Hain household with Belanish and Abe. He has been living in an apartment on his own that his adoptive mother rents for him. But in 3 weeks, he will turn 18, and after that, his mother will cut him off.
I feel angry that with so many resources, so much wealthy people around here, nobody looks into the kids who are actually getting adopted, and, you know, what happens to their life, you know, so.
Belanish is now 21. While she's not on the street, she does not have a permanent home and moves from house to house.
Be careful, baby.
She often stays with her older sister Mimi and her 2 children.
Jelly strong. Next.
Mimi was also kicked out of the Hain house.
To adopt 30 children, bring them over to the United States and turn them loose on the street and have them, this is sad. This should be stopped. No government should allow this to happen. And this is not acceptable. This is inhuman.
All I want was my mom and dad. That's all I needed. I just want to go back to my country and die in my country. I don't want to die in somebody's country. I don't know why I came here. I had everything. I was free. I was happy back when I was. And now my life is, I guess, I don't know. I don't have none. I give up.
Okay. That's a difficult watch, and unfortunately, it's the tip of the iceberg when it comes to cases of abuse in transracial adoption families. And the full documentary is actually an hour and a half long with multiple stories similar to that and worse as well. So it's heartbreaking and maddening to hear these stories when, you know, you hear at the end of my video, you know, these parents promising to take care of these children, to love these children. So it's tough, you know, as a child to believe that and then go and feel the opposite. So, and often when I watch things like that, I think about all the stories that you know, haven't been reached by the news, or, you know, the adoptees that haven't been able to speak up. And yeah, all the stories that are just still in the dark. And in the silence, and that motivates me to keep on speaking out about adoption, to keep on giving voices to adoptees, because the narrative is definitely tipped. And so tonight we get a chance to talk to someone who is actively trying to actively helping these stories from adoptees come to the surface, so the narrative of adoption can be shifted. Lidet O'Connor is a transracial adoptee. She was adopted in 2007 from Ethiopia with her younger sister. And Lidet is the founder and host of the podcast Ethiopian Adoptees, Unapologetically Unfiltered, which focuses on pushing adoptee voices from the margins to the center of the conversation around adoption. She hopes to create some sense of community for Ethiopian adoptees and looks forward to expanding her work to create resources and more concrete changes. Lidet, and so please join me in welcoming Lidet O'Connor. Abba, if you could change the... Sorry. Zoom. Oh, can we go back? Yeah, I know. Sorry. Can you go back to it? Zoom. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Go back. Yeah, I know. Sorry. Oh, I think your lab's on. Okay. Okay, and then I'll turn around. Yeah. Okay.
Hello. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Sorry. 1 second.
It's all good.
Okay, can you guys hear her?
Hi. I don't know if everyone can hear me.
Yeah, there too. Lidet, thank you so much for joining us today. We're so glad to have you. How are you doing?
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here. I don't know if you guys all know Amsa, but she's such a sweetheart. So I was so excited when she included me in this. So thank you for having me.
Of course, thank you for being here. So we obviously in your bio we talk about the fact that you created a podcast talking about Ethiopian adoptees, and so we just want to know what was your journey to creating that podcast, and yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think like many people, and especially adoptees, it's always super nice to glorify, certain things that we do, but the podcast truly came from a place of like absolute just anxiety in my life. And after coming back from undergrad, and I feel like I had to make all these big decisions, and a lot of decisions that I'd made, I just really like considered it through the white gaze, through what I thought my adoptive parents wanted for me, yada, yada, yada. And I just found myself I was in a place of just so much anxiety. I would honestly say depression too. And I just felt like the need to like constantly get away from things. I couldn't figure out what was going on. And then I think just as a result of a lot of us, the other Ethiopian adoptees that are in the area, I realized that a lot of us were in this place. And so I thought, okay, well, let me talk about it. And I'm also somebody since I was really young, I've always really liked to talk about our experience as adoptees, even though when it wasn't cool or when people weren't ready to talk about it, because I don't know why, I just thought the whole thing was just so just weird. It was just so fucking bizarre, and I felt like nobody was talking about it. Excuse my language there, but anyway, long story short, I started the podcast from just a place of trying to connect with other adoptees, and then realizing that clearly we all don't know what's going on. We're all having an insane identity crisis, just regardless of where we are in our life. And it was actually deeply impacting our everyday life. It wasn't major moments or this, that, it's just the everyday, and we didn't know where to go, where to turn. So the podcast really started from a place of, I wasn't in a great place, but I'm glad that I did it.
Yeah. And the podcast is on Spotify if you guys ever want to take a listen. There's some really just found and just interesting stories that also relay different types of adoptee stories and families. And so if you guys want to check it out, it's there. Follow-up question. What would you say to adoptees that may be going through a similar like heightened period of confusion and frustration and like identity crisis? I know adoption is a lifelong process. You're always going to be going through these questions, how, why me? But there's sometimes heightened periods that kind of leave you derailed. So
yeah, as you mentioned with the podcast, I guess what I'm going to say answering that question truly does come from my personal experience, but the podcast was kind of like the start of something that I just didn't know what I was getting myself into. It's been an honor to connect with so many adoptees who come to me, and there's a lot of, there are quite a few stories on there, and just we have like informal conversations on there, and they just tell me what they want to tell me. However, there are dozens of adoptees that I've met and conversations that I've had, and they don't feel comfortable sharing, which is okay. But adoptees are truly in a place, most Ethiopian adoptees are in a really, really, really fragile place, in a really scary place, in a kind of life-endangering sort of situation. A lot of people don't really see the adoption process like that, the adoptee experience like that. And so because of that, whether, it be like we have high rates of substance abuse, whether that be drug, alcohol, self-harm is really high, eating disorders is high, suicide and suicide ideation is really, really high within our community. So the one thing I always want our community to know is that it does get better. I know that's like a phrase that's been used in other minority groups and stuff like that, but a lot of adoptees can't see beyond the kind of world that they've been forced into, this new life that everybody had a say in except for them. And a lot of adopters at the same time, as you guys have seen through Amsalech's story, and as well as the documentary that they that you had a chance just to view, a lot of adoptee experiences are like that and worse. It's not a one thing or a small group. That's a majority of the experiences are incredibly scary, and they're alone, and they have nowhere to turn to and no one to turn to. You don't know who to trust. And so I always tell, and I like to tell other adoptees, and I like to remind myself that it gets better. You'll get more autonomy, you'll get resources, but you have to trust that it does get better, and it will get better, just to kind of hang on. I would also say to be very forgiving of maybe your biological family, and do not necessarily listen to what your adoptive parents say about you not being wanted, or there's really no place for you, or that they're your only hope, and all these things. A lot of it is lies, is misinformation. A lot of it is abuse of the power dynamic that a lot of adoptive parents have over adoptees. I know like adoptees that I've grown up with where some of their parents are seen as these amazing people, and they're telling them that they own them at the age, like in their 20s, like that they literally own them. So this is when I say like life gets better. A lot of us need to be reminded of that, and we have to learn to be very gentle with ourselves and not necessarily accept the narratives that are thrown our way from our adoptive parents, and to maybe be a little bit more understanding of perhaps where a lot of our biological families, I guess, where they're coming from, and the reality of maybe why they put you up for adoption isn't really what's being conveyed because of the insane amount of corruption. And lastly, I guess I would say is build community, find other Ethiopians. If, that's also like I know an issue within our large Ethiopian community, but find another adoptee. I will like briefly mention here, we do Zooms once or twice a month with just the only Ethiopian adoptees that are allowed to join, just specifically because a lot of adoptees talk about feeling an insane sense of isolation and feeling by themselves, and they feel like they can't trust anybody, they don't have anyone to turn to, and that they're truly on their own. And so find a community, find a space, find someone you can trust, someone that can listen to you, that won't judge you. And I think that's also really important.
Yeah. You touched on some really important things, and Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So what would you say to the non-adoptees? What would you want non-adoptees to understand about adoption?
I think what a lot of non-adoptees have to understand is that just because a process like adoption is supposed to function a certain way, it doesn't mean that it necessarily doesn't. But more importantly, when you have those who actually have gone through the experience, or that experience is their actual day-to-day life, and they tell you it is not what you think it is, I don't understand what the need is to sit there and argue with somebody. And this isn't even to be condescending or mean. I think the older I get, the more frustrated I get. Because I can't imagine sitting across to somebody who has, an experience and me saying, no, that can't be right. Well, that is true. And I think a lot of you have to look inward and think, okay, like, what is it about this process that maybe it is the fact that you think, it's solving all these social issues. You have a child that needs a home and, people that want a family, and that, you combine them, it's solving all these issues. But the reality is, something like adoption, it can be a legitimate way to, perhaps solve problems. But the reality is it attracts, especially where there's corruption, the wrong people. It sounds horrible, but you look at certain issues like might be, it sounds horrible, but something like pedophiles, right? They will go into school systems, they'll go into whatever, maybe it might be like childcare facilities, whatever, because they have easy access, right? Of course, that's where they're going to be. So look at adoptive parents and people that want to adopt, of course, where there is a lot of corruption in a country that isn't properly monitoring it, the kinds of people that are going to get by and who are going to adopt children are not necessarily those people that have the best intentions. So again, I think adoption is complex, but I think the first thing is please stop questioning adoptees when they tell you they're having, they had a horrible experience. And more importantly, when they tell you and they are finally at that point where they feel like they can trust you to tell you some of the horrific experience that they've gone through, it also is not okay to sit there and tell you, well, that's an outlier experience. You need to shut up and be grateful. You can't, especially when a lot of our existence is held in a very, very fragile balance, incredibly fragile. I would also say that, and I only say this now, I was talking to Amsalech about this. I put this little TikTok video on something that I've been trying to articulate for years, because it comes from this idea of people telling adoptees, just be grateful. Opportunities. And I think we've heard that a million times. Adoption gives you opportunities. You have education, you have water, you have, like, what do you have to complain about? We've saved you. And then people go ahead and also perpetuate that. And the problem with that is if identity is not intact, opportunity doesn't matter, right? So if you have adoptees, and this is particularly came from a place when over winter break, I had some amazing other adoptee friends that are much better connected than myself, and they were telling me about Ethiopian adoptees who died by suicide, and how much of that information was being withheld by the media because of adoptive parents and all these different things. And it's so interesting because under these posts or comments, whatever, you'd see comments where people were saying, oh, like, how can this be? They were successful, they were going places, they had an amazing career, this, whatever. And they couldn't place that. While simultaneously, when an adoptee is telling whatever's on TikTok, on social media, people about their experience, they're under the comments section telling you, shut up and be grateful for the opportunities you've been given. So clearly there's a disconnect here. But like I said, in my video, I think it's a selective application of something we all already understand. When you have a non-adoptee who goes through something traumatic, say a parent dies, a close relative dies, a friend dies, and the child starts having, all these behavioral issues, stops performing well in school, doesn't really want to hang out with friends, all these things, we can put one and one together and realize something really traumatic has happened and it's impacting their life. That's the adoptee experience of 1,000 times worse. It's just, that's what it is. And when an adoptee, is given all these opportunities and people are sitting here saying, come on, like, you have all these opportunities. What could possibly go wrong? I think it's just a very selective application of something that we are already understand and we empathize with certain people. When it comes to adoptees, specifically Black adoptees, specifically Black African adoptees, we have a really, really hard time accepting that, and not only being accepting that, listening, being empathetic, and actually being an ally or an advocate or somebody that can truly make a difference. Instead, it's, you know, reinforcing a really, really kind of deadly practice that's going on, or that was at least going on. So I would definitely say identity is more important than opportunity, and to please see that. And I guess the last thing I would say is, and I don't know how much of this I can articulate well, but one of the things that I found, even whether it's through my personal experience, the experiences of my other adoptee friends, adoptees that I've had the honor to talk to, there's always people, whether it's, you know, other Ethiopians, rarely, you know, it's usually a lot of us are brought up in predominantly white areas. There are people that suspect that there's something wrong and they don't speak up. They don't say anything. And I think a lot of it has to do with, in part, when you see white people, you're thinking, oh, you know, they must have good intention. Not everybody, but I think that just seems to be the case. Even when I read an article about Hannah Williams or Hannah Lemu, whose story is so incredibly tragic, you know, there's accounts from the neighbors saying, you know, they did see certain things that the family was doing and they were concerned. They thought it was odd and they didn't say anything. And so a lot of adoptees, even though some of us are a lot older, some of them are like my age in our early 20s, or some of us are much younger. Adoption ended in 2018. So there are adoptees, they're 7, 8, 9 years old. You know, if you see that there's problematic sort of parenting, or just different ways that, you know, maybe an adoptee is being excluded, or they're super quiet, or they saying really concerning things, please listen. And I think as Ethiopian adoptee experiences continue to be shared and they continue to open up, I think more and more people will be aware. But I think it's the awareness and being inquisitive. And when you see something, say something. And I say that, and I hate that Hannah Williams and Lemu, had to be like the kind of the poster child for that. But that something like that should never, ever be happening, right? And going back to the whole idea of adoption being super romanticized and stuff, it shouldn't be, especially when we know things like that, this have happened, and adoptees continue to be in really, really scary situations. So yeah.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Yeah. Four worst words to hear as an adoptee. You should be grateful. It's like, bruh. But last question here before we turn to audience questions. What advice would you give to people who want to be active in their understanding of and awareness of adoptees? Like, I guess, what things should they not say? Or, I mean, I think you answered a little bit of this in the last question, but other resources, things like that.
Yeah, just like most topics, and people always say, educate yourself. And so I would say that's the same thing, educate yourselves. You know, there are, if you're really interested, you can look up articles and look at that. There are documentaries. There are adoptees who freely kind of do this labor and they talk about these issues, getting very little in return, if not, they don't really get anything, but a lot of hate comments. And so, you know, you can find you know, resources out there that talk about this, you know, learn about the issue. I think that's the best way to show up informed. I think at the same time, again, please stop telling adoptees to be grateful. Please stop telling them that they have all these opportunities. I say this because it's killing us. And I say that in the video that I made too, and it sounds dramatic, but it's quite literally killing us. And it doesn't matter if an adoptee is high achieving, high performing. In fact, I would say be concerned about those the most, because it's those that, you know, and especially young Ethiopian adoptee boys have been specifically more prone to dying by suicide. And so, again, always it's, oh, you know, they're excelling, they're doing so well, and clearly that's not the problem, right? There's something else going on. So your words have power. Please really, really, really think about that. And also I would just say, like, don't make adoptees do the labor for you. I don't think a lot of people understand that we constantly have to explain ourselves. We constantly have to feel like we have to justify our existence to you, justify our pain, justify our loss, justify. Let's try to minimize that. And I think educating yourselves, listening is, I think this is a great place to start, and going from there.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Okay, so we're going to turn to audience questions, Q&A. So with that, does anyone have any questions for Lidet?
Hello, I'm Amsalech Burke. I just had a quick question about like adoption and like being a young adoptee growing up in an adopted family. Like, how does that, like, what is the relationship between you and your culture? Like, how does you raising up being adopted impact like the wanting to know more about your culture and the wanting to know more about like Ethiopian culture or just your culture in general? Like, can you talk about that relationship a little bit?
Definitely. So it really depends. Adoption is different family to family, but in a lot of cases, especially, and also in my case, my family did not talk about my culture. I think I saw this video of me as a child living with my adopted family, like maybe once we watched it together, and I really did not like watching it because my family never talked about Ethiopia. I was never around Ethiopians. I was made to feel really weird in school as the only Black person in my grade. And so I hated everything about where I was from. I hated being Black. I hated being Ethiopian. I never wanted to talk about it because there was such an extreme absence of my culture. And so that made me feel like, it made me feel like I was wrong because I couldn't fit in anywhere, quite literally. I had to fix my accent, fix my language, could not change the color of my skin. And had all these questions about, it got all these questions about Africa that I couldn't answer, didn't want to answer. So, you kind of start to, it's this internal hatred where obviously that it wasn't your fault, but you feel like it is your fault at the same time, and you just don't know what to do because you're caught in this realm of just not understanding your identity. You're basically like in a dark room trying to blink and see something because you aren't white, but you have like a white family and white friends, and then you don't feel, I guess I didn't feel Black because I was never around Black Americans, and then I didn't feel Ethiopian at all because I never saw anything about my culture. So it's really tough, and I think it definitely fluctuates family to family, but that was my experience. Lidet, do you want to expand on that?
No, I would 100% agree. I spent most of my life trying to separate myself from everything, from being Black, from being Ethiopian. Yeah, I would totally echo exactly what you said. Yeah.
And it's really difficult to come back from that as well because, like relearning your culture, relearning your language, all that. It brings back like that feeling of, you kind of have to work to feel like you belong again in something that you used to belong in but don't anymore. So it's both ways. It's a struggle. So appreciate the question.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your personal history with us. I really appreciate it. I have many questions, but I will try to. First, I know in Ethiopian culture that people adopt like as part of like if someone parents passed away, so they will join the aunt or uncle family. So I wonder if, like, is there, like, how many Ethiopian people in Ethiopia adopt children in Ethiopia? What are the proportions? And if it's like people adopt people outside of their extended family, if you know something about it. Also about the legality of things, like this family from the documentary, the two parents that, so what are they committed to in terms of like the legal system? Like, do they supposed to, like, is it a crime what they're doing? Like, why they're not in jail? Or what is the law about it? Like, is it like what you said about, like, you gave the example of pedophiles, that it's like corrupted area. So can you explain a little bit about it? Thank you.
Lidet, do you want to say?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think I got what you said a little bit farther back here, but yeah. So I think at least I'm going to start with what you first, I guess what you just mentioned, and I think a lot of what adoptive parents are doing to adoptees or have done, adoptees don't know what their rights are. And so a lot of the abuse that they face, whether it's physical, emotional, psychological, it's a lot of us the power dynamic is just totally not in our favor. So by the time adoptees maybe even realize that what had happened, it was wrong, and maybe that they should press charges or whatever, it just seems like almost opening up old wounds. They just want to get along with their life. I think you have to also understand in a lot of these situations is that adoptees, if you're in this, in a family and, not so great things are happening around you, like, who do you turn to? Because at the end of the day, the adoptive parents have a lot of, and it tends to be the case too, influence in the community. People trust them, people like them. They're your relatives, right? Who are they? They're your adoptive family's family, biological family. So you think about the implications of that. So it ends up truly trapping adoptees. When they say they're isolated, they are truly isolated. They don't know where to go. They don't know what to say. They don't know who they would even go to for help. And at the same time, the truth of it comes down to money, finances, who has the money, who has the money, who has the resources. So even when it comes to the idea of opportunity, they're pulling all those strings, right? So who do you have left if those people hate you and you don't have support? So I think a lot of it has to do with just not knowing who to turn to. And by the time maybe you realize do I really want to go down that road? And I think at the beginning you had asked about how the Ethiopian adoption system, can Ethiopians in Ethiopia adopt?
The question was like how the question was about how many Ethiopians like adopt with domestically, and like if there's statistics for that, because it's just seen as there are people that have done it. So we're just wondering about the statistics of it, which I don't know the answer to.
Okay, yeah. So, in terms of statistics, I don't know, but that's a great question, and I will. I really can get back to you on that. So I think that's important. I know adoption in Ethiopia, even though it has, stopped in terms of inter-country adoption and things like that. They have recently, within the last 2 months, are saying they might open up, domestic and international adoption for Ethiopians, living abroad or within Ethiopia. I think that in a lot of ways, and again, I don't want to speak without the statistics, without the facts, the concept of adoption really didn't exist, at least when adoption commenced in Ethiopia, right? It came from a place of, after the Civil War, after for the famine, all these things, you did have, in fact, children who needed homes. All of those are not the children that they often targeted. It was people with families, children with families that didn't want to give them up. And so even within that, the practice of children not being with their biological family, it's not that it's uncommon. Again, I think you mentioned, they go live with their aunt, their uncles, their relatives, and that's normal, but that isn't considered adoption. That's just kind of the way you go about it. And that's, like I said, that's normal. So I think when adoption first started in Ethiopia, they didn't really even understand fully what adoption meant as this, severing of a tie, and that you really have no rights over the child anymore. And so I don't know, I guess once adoption, started and what the statistics are in terms of Ethiopians that adopted, Ethiopian children. But again, I can totally get back to you on that because I think that's a good question.
And I want to add to the second part of your question about the white families in the video, but also other white families that have adopted. There is a big evangelical motivation to adopt. They reference, my adopted father, he always referenced this verse saying, like, God called us to help the orphans and the widows. So he, there's a huge push to go and into especially the reason why Africa became this really big hub for adoption is because the hot spots before then, like Guatemala, China, Ukraine, Russia, I think, don't quote me exactly on those two, but they had limited their adoptions because of corruption. And so a lot of the attention turned to Africa, and it was just like where it really just exploded, like boost, like just insane amount of adoptions. So they feel really good about it. They feel like saviors. They get a lot of attention. People say, you made a sacrifice, you are amazing. And that is also, what Lidet was saying, that's a really hard, facade to push through as the child of these parents. So if you are the child getting either psychologically or physically abused, to speak up against, your parents when you go to church with them and everybody loves them and people say, I wish I had your mom. I wish, I love your parents. They do this and this and this, and they're so kind. And then you go home and it's not the same. You wish you could tell somebody, but you're like, who would listen? Because they don't see the people I have to live with, and they don't see what happens behind closed doors. So I think that's why it's so important to center the adoptee within these conversations, which hasn't really been done very often, because you don't know the whole story until you hear the adoptee talk about their experience with the parent. The parent in Hannah's case, when the parents are brought to trial, one of the attorneys, they said, well, these parents are abusive, and they might be ill-meaning, but they're not criminals. And then the parents said, we were just trying to discipline Hannah. We thought that she was misbehaving. And the thing is, it's like, adoptees have trauma, they have PTSD. It's already a lot to get severed from your culture, your identity, your family, and you don't even know what's going on. So that's already a lot. Even if you have an amazing adopted family, which there are out there, it's still it's an everyday struggle to understand that you don't know what's going on with your siblings, your family, the things you remember. And on top of that, to have abuse and to feel like you're not wanted in America, you're not wanted in Ethiopia, it's really difficult. So that's what I'd say to that.
Oh, hello, Amsa. Just want to
Hi,
say
Maxwell.
thank you. To hear both of your stories, you and Lidet. And another thank you for y'all to be so vulnerable. I know it takes a lot. And my question today was related to, I know y'all mentioned a lot of self-hatred that occurred as a result of an alienation from your homes and from your culture. And what I wanted to ask was, what pushed y'all to begin to explore your identities and re-engage with your cultures, and what was the process like?
Good question. Lidet?
Yeah, sure, I can go. I think for me, the process started when I realized that me trying to kind of live up to the expectations, what I thought I had to be as an adoptee, specifically as an adoptee, adopted by white parents and living in a white community. When I realized that what I was doing and trying to get their stamp of approval was just never going to get me anywhere. And at the same time, simultaneously, when I went to school and started undergrad, I had like the first time the amazing opportunity to be connected with a bunch of just different Africans, just from different parts of, and also people from different parts of the world in general. And they really just celebrated me being Ethiopian. And I remember my first friend, he's from Qatar, and he was like, "Oh, I know that East African forehead from anywhere." It was like how we started our friendship. And I remember being like, "What does that even really mean?" And I was like really like bothered by it. But then it really grew. And then, having other friends who like literally celebrated me being Ethiopian before I ever even wanted anything to do with that aspect of myself was really important, because then I realized, wow, I really feel so much better when I'm okay with who I am, and when I'm actually celebrated in that. And it wasn't until I was away from home, I was around people who celebrated me and my Ethiopianness well before I was even open to it, that I realized that, oh my gosh, like what I'd been doing was just so incredibly detrimental. And then I'm not gonna lie, at 23 years of age, as exciting as it's been getting to this point, the journey and the damage that I did, the damage that adoption did, the damage that my adoptive parents kind of brought on intentionally and unintentionally, just growing up in a white society, it's going to be lifelong because it's so deeply rooted. But it has started, and for me, I think it really was getting away and being with other Africans and just even other international students in general really was transformative for me.
Yeah, I would totally agree. It started for me also with the separation from my adoptive parents, because I think you can't really process what you went through and your thoughts, your memories, while being in a place where you don't feel stable, where you don't feel safe or loved. So for me to leave my adoptive family and come here or also I went to other places before I came here, those were really critical times for me to reflect on things that I had been suppressing, which is my desire to know my culture, my memories, or like trying to validate myself in the things that I went through with my adoptive family. Because I think after years of suppressing, you start to gaslight yourself when you think about the things that happen with your adoptive family, because you say, oh well, I mean, they did give me all these things, and they did pay for this, they did pay for that, it's not really that bad, I could have it worse. And it's just those types of things like really just kind of put you like steps back from really just feeling comfortable with yourself and really knowing who you are and like the things you went through and validating yourself. So that's kind of just like the first part of the process, because as I said earlier, relearning your culture, relearning your language, relearning about talking to people that are part of that are Ethiopian, like for me it's really beautiful. It's an amazing experience. Like I am so happy to be in this journey of my life now, but it's also increasingly more difficult every day, because it's still a struggle with the identity. I still struggle with like, am I really Ethiopian? Am I really this? Am I really that? So it is a lifelong process, but it's way better on this side where I don't feel like I'm pushing things away consistently. I'm actually embracing things that are me.
Hello, I'm also an Ethiopian adoptee, and one of thank you. One of the things that I've been struggling with is kind of that community building. So, when it comes to community, like building community, what are some obstacles you guys have faced, and how have you tried to overcome them? And then, what advice would you have for an Ethiopian adoptee to kind of build community?
Well, I would say to talk to other, like find other Ethiopian adoptees. If you can't, like, I think that's where, you know, if you come together and you're able to talk to somebody that understands your struggle, and then you guys can both really, you know, hold yourselves while you go into relearning about your culture, relearning your language, things like that, and you can expand your community. And I think that's really the way that I've done it, because it's hard to be comfortable, you know, knowing you're adopted, even in Ethiopian spaces. So, because you still feel like the outsider, and that's really difficult to go through. So if you have somebody there that understands, and you know, I hope to make like a adoptee club at Howard, and just, you know, invite people to come and be able to talk to each other, so that, you know, it really changes. It really helps validate your feelings when you know, hear somebody else talk about their experience, and, you know, you're like, oh my gosh, I went through that too, and just really like cements it. So I think that's the first step that I would recommend.
Yeah, I would also echo what what Amsa just said. Sorry. I would also say this might be kind of a controversial take, and I say this with all the love for our adoptee community. It's actually interesting because another older Ethiopian adoptee friend that I have that I look up to, actually, that we had a conversation back in the fall, when she said to me, she said, you know, I love our community, but we are really messed up. She's the F word, but she said, we're really messed up. And she said, not because it's our fault, and not because not that we are these problems that need to be fixed, but she said, in a lot of ways, we still, just like anybody else, we need to be careful about who we do find ourselves in community with. And I say that again, I have so much love for our community, so I want to make sure I make that very clear. But just saying that, even in this position, as somebody who now is very critical of adoption, after being somebody who felt the need to be like, yeah, no, I'm so grateful for everything that it's given me, and kind of just, I shut my mouth and kept it as that, I'm very outspoken now. And there are some adoptees who don't necessarily like that, right? And so I would say to you, absolutely find community amongst, you know, other adoptees. It's important to do that. But not just any adoptee, just any Ethiopian adoptee, if that makes sense. And that sounds really harsh, but I think that's important to say. Of course, we should embrace each other, but we're all on our own journey, in our own path, which is totally understandable, as we should be, right? Nobody gets to tell us how we get to heal, but find people that are on the same trajectory as you. You know, are you interested in learning the language? Okay, there's some that aren't. They don't have, you know, that don't really want that, and that's okay. So find those that are, you know, are. There are some people that hate to be critical of Ethiopian adoption, even when they know their own friends have been incredibly hurt by their, you know, adoption process, by what the Ethiopian government did, all these different things with their adopted parents did, and, you know, they still don't want to be critical of it. So find people that are going to be critical about it, and whether it's you have a religious affiliation or not, like, really think about those things, because I didn't, and as a result, you know, I had to reassess some friendships, and maybe certain ways I communicate with them. So that's the only little tidbit that I would add. But I hope, again, you understand this does not come from a place of like, you know, I hate our community, or I only love parts. I love all of us, but definitely find those that are on a similar path to you in that regard.
I understand.
Hi, I have 2 questions. One question is about really around Pan-Africanism, and I heard Lidet mention that it was being around other African students not necessarily just Ethiopians, that help you love your Ethiopianness. So I wanted you to speak on that. And also, you guys, I know this conversation is about transracial adoption with the focus on Ethiopian adoptees, but do you all also work with other African adoptees, other Black transracial adoptees? And how has that experience been?
So to answer your first question, I had a similar, not super similar, but I studied abroad in Senegal when I was a junior in high school. And that trip and that time was really healing for me, because I was, I lived in Africa for about, 8-9 months. And that was where, I got a lot of pride about where the continent where I came from. So that was like a really great foundation to a year or two later, me being like, okay, I can explore certain parts of my identity that I pushed away for so long. So I do see the importance of that as well. To answer your second question, I've seen similarities in adoption stories and transracial adoption stories from across the world. Chinese adoptees, Korean adoptees, Indian adoptees. The list goes on and on and on. It's really adoptees can connect from a lot of different, stories, and even same race adoptee, like adopted families and stuff. But the real connection that I've found, that the stories that I've been able to hold and say, oh, this is similar to my story, is the transracial part of, having white parents. So I definitely think that this club, this community that I'm trying to create is not exclusive to Ethiopian adoptees. I think, we can all make space for other adoptees as well, because there are similar trends.
Yeah, no, going off that, I think that it is really crucial, especially, I guess, when maybe you don't have the option to be around, Ethiopians or Ethiopian adoptees, having other African communities that, you can be in community with and that do accept you, it really is essential, right? Whether it is just to bring Africa together, like in that way, but also for myself, as I mentioned, like it was so integral. And I say this, like, my international friends, my Ghanaian, my Tanzanian friends, like whatever, they're so important to kind of the sort of revolution I experienced, and sort of like a very important pivot point in my life. So I think that aspect of it is really important. I'm going to go ahead and say, and I'm going to be very honest, and it will sound kind of harsh. My space and like what I focus on is specifically for Ethiopian adoptees. And I say that because in my personal experience, in the experiences of other Ethiopian adoptees who've tried kind of doing this work and trying to advocate for Ethiopian adoptees, we're often kind of an add-on when it comes to talking about adoptee issues, even transracial adoptee issues. And we're kind of like the DEI placement somehow, is where like the African in on the Zoom or on the panel on whatever that may be. And again, it isn't to say that that's not important work. I think right now it's important to almost be really specific and almost be exclusive and selective in order for our community and our needs to be met right now. And the more work that I do in that, the more time I spend in getting to know more Ethiopian adoptees, I'm even more, I feel that it's almost essential that I continue to stick to that, because we get lost in the mix and our community is just kind of forgotten about, and that the change is really slow. And I just don't think we can afford right now to be, or for myself at least, to be more inclusive in terms of including other, transracial adoptees. I don't know if I fully answered your question, but yeah.
Thank you. So I'm Tarikwa. I am Ethiopian adoptee. We have been out talking about you for a long time. I'm happy to see that Gen Zs and younger generations are taking over, because I knew that they were not going to be silent when they grow up, which is amazing. So in 1972, National Association of Black Social Workers came out against transracial adoption within domestic international adoption. And a lot of people had, white people threw uproar. And as you can see, when you see Black adoptees who say, oh, we're not Black, or we're not Ethiopian, you can see why they said what they said, which is they're not going to be able to socialize the kids to be Black or Ethiopian American. So it makes sense. And I would say that the legal issues with taking up against white adoptive parents is hard, because they have privilege, right? So you're going against the court system and you're going against white people. And that's one of the reasons why adoptees are struggling with holding their adoptive parents accountable. But I just want to say thank you so much for having this forum.
Yeah.
Oh, you have a question right here.
Go ahead. Okay. Peace and Pan-Africanism and love is love. My name is Augustus. I had the pleasure of even watching your film in its entirety a couple of months ago, but to see your analysis and see the breakdown in between, it's like that process of I just want your commentary on this as well, because Kamal kind of like, I was already going to talk about it with him on the side, but about like the inclusivity of us exploring the dialectics of this. I don't want to just keep calling it the system, but how the dialectics. I've had a teacher before, amazing teacher, who tells me, like, in America they orphan us, and in all these colonized countries they orphan you from your home country, in the way you're raised, and the way you embrace your humanity, and the way Kamal like brought it up in terms of like across all sorts, yet like paying homage to the identity of how we all travel here and lose our not lose, but we it's lost and found per se our essence. But listening to, I'm relating to like at least coming here from a different country, but then feeling ashamed with how it's purposely put in the education system for me to hate my home country or feel inferior with the level of self that like I can't even try to. And then when you finally get a level of privilege, you go to college, you get that salary job, and you get some privilege. It's like how you said America is your parent that gave you this privilege, and then now you can't even, like, you're trying to speak bad on it, but it's like you might sound like a little too much of a negative Nancy trying to speak on certain things among certain crowds, or in that type of way, like, or like for me, just like, oh, you're a conspiracy, like you processing it too much. And I guess in my artistry, I want to ask how does this affect your expression? I'm thinking, I'm writing a lot of these stories, a lot of these feelings that like I'm still unsettled about, or like I'm like, I don't know if anyone feels like that, but then how you described it just now, like you kind of even grieving a past version of yourself once you learn this new information, and that grief comes with anger, denial, acceptance, rationality, like. It's literally stages of grieving through the old self that you were so comfortable with, but to embrace that in your, I don't even want to say, I say artistic expression too. I've seen like some things you cook up, or just even the care. How does that, how are you advancing that now? I was trying to make this like a whole, like, all right, like I'm relate to it, but then it's still like that essence. I want to hear more about like your part. Like it's still a lot of this where we've been disconnected like physically and spiritually from our home countries in that type of way. But like, what are some of the unique ways you're embracing your expressing now. See, just even with this event is an example of that to me. I want to hear it out of your mouth.
That's a good question. Yeah, I really relate to like grieving a past, like a past you. I think adoptees, you kind of have to grieve your loss of childhood, loss of innocence, because to deal with such a traumatic thing at such a young age, it's you shouldn't have to go through that. And you kind of are, you're matured prematurely, your mind is. And so I've had to really think about that, just the things that I was questioning and thinking about at the ages of 10, 11, 12. I shouldn't really have been thinking about those things. So I think disassociation really saved me, being able to step out of my body and just go through the motions of every day, just to say like, okay, I'm gonna get out one day. I'm gonna get out. I'm not gonna be part of this family one day. I'm not gonna. It's really helped me. But now through that disassociation and suppression of thoughts, feelings, anger, it is coming out now that I'm like in a safe space. And I think sometimes I wonder, like, am I struggling more now than I did before? Because now that I have to go through the pain, and I know that. So going through the memories, going through the feelings, the thoughts, the anger, I'm telling y'all, like it's like inside, it doesn't look like it, but it's like boiling. And you kind of have to figure out like, where's the place for this? Where can I put this? Because I think a trend that I've seen among adoptees is, we've been through so much, and I want to mention like international adoptees, but I mean, I've spoken with a lot of Ethiopian adoptees, but the things that we've been through, and meeting them, you never know, because they're some of the most resilient, very kind-hearted, bright, happy people, and then you hear their stories, you're like, what happened to you? What happened? So it's kind of amazing, but also really like, how are we able to do that? How are we able to put those things away and still be kind to others, even though we've experienced such loss? And so the way I've, expressed myself and been able to process these feelings and thoughts, is like, I've done it through art. I draw a lot. I write a lot. Writing has really saved me. Journaling, because I know that I don't have any malicious intent towards my adopted parents. I don't want anything bad to happen to them, but at the same time, I know that I cannot be around them. And so establishing my boundaries is also a way of me taking care of myself and saying, like, I want myself to grow now. I want myself to really come into my own being for the first time.
That's so beautiful. And I guess in my own way, I'm a terrible artist and I can barely draw a stick figure. So that's definitely not, much as I wish I could do that, that's definitely not my way. But I find that journaling has been really helpful. I don't write as much as I would like to, but I know in high school that was like my escape and in trying to express just a lot of suppressed emotion. I guess now it is the podcast, talking to other Ethiopian adoptees, and I say the honor because a lot of these adoptees, they have to come to me and say that they want to share their story. And so when they do that, I don't know, I think in a way that almost heals a lot of things in me in some way. So I think that's my form of art, is talking and communicating with other adoptees and sharing it with other adoptees and social media and other people that want to know more about the adoptee experience. And I guess in a way, I don't even know how to articulate this part, but I started going to therapy for the first time in my life back in August. And my therapist and it took a while for me to figure out what I wanted to do. And I said, I was like, my goal indefinitely right now is getting to know Lidet. I don't really know who she is. I'm not really, I don't know a lot about her. I do know some, and a lot of it has to do with unlearning a lot of things. As Amsad mentioned, it's also unpacking a lot, and it's also learning that there's quite literally no way around it. It's straight through it. And adoption, I can't separate myself, or I can't separate Lidet from adoption. That is a part of who I am in my existence. But in a way, it's almost like an everyday check-in with myself about, I don't know. It's really hard, but it's asking myself, do I really want to do that? What do I actually think? What is my gut actually telling me? And it sounds really silly, but it's a lot of the way I've been programmed, it's really harmful to me. And so it's finding out, okay, how do I trust my gut again? How do I do this? And I see it as more of an exciting journey that I get to meet this person that's super authentic, and it's herself. I don't know who she is, and I'd like to get to know her, and I'm slowly getting to know her. And I think in a way that sort of, I don't know, a way that I've found a lot of excitement in through the really inevitable pain and a lot of the journey that's still ahead. But yeah, I think that's a great question. Yeah.
Agree with that. No, we're nearing the end, so I think we can take like one or two questions. One question.
Oh, okay. I guess I'm the last one.
Okay.
I'm adopted as well. I'm from Boston. From my personal experience, my parents have been great. They've given me all the advantages a young kid could wish for. I've had of course, a troubled past, just being adopted from Ethiopia when I was 9. So I have a lot of, traumatic memories from there. And my parents have been able to, of course, give me the resources to deal with those issues and have an open space where I can talk about it with them comfortably. And my real question was, you said something about growing up and not having an identity, and not because there wasn't many Black people, what it meant to be Black. And I'm wondering, is it a neglect of identity if your parents raise you to be yourself, not Black or other? Like if you're just raised, hey, you are my son and you're Eob, is that a neglect of identity?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's you can't separate.
They're not saying you're not Black, but they just raise you as Eob.
Right, but you have to. What? Whoa. Okay. No, I understand what your question, but I think it is because not addressing, or when people are like, oh, colorblind, or they don't talk about Blackness, they don't talk about it's gonna affect you. You need to learn you're made to be Black in America, first of all, and I think it is the worst thing to be, and I think a lot of people it's people know that, and what kind of struggles and boundaries you're bound to have as being Black in America. So you have to learn your history, ancestry, things like that, what happened and what the struggle is, because you are a part of that now. And I think that's really important for my parents also, they never talked about being Black, and and that also led me to just never really feel Black, because it was never talked about. It's not like they were trying to neglect it, but they were also not trying to enforce anything either. They weren't trying to uplift me in the fact that I was Black or Ethiopian, and Ethiopian. So I think it's a neglect of culture both ways. Black is your culture that connects you to all the Black people in the world. And yet, and there's a specific like feeling and knowing when, you know, you're connected with another Black person. And then, you know, your Ethiopian heritage is also a connection to other, you know, the people that look similar to you as well, and share your culture and traditions and things like that. So it is like duly important to reinforce both of those things. And when it's not enforced, even if the parents are amazing and great and very kind and give you everything, it is still a misstep on their part, because, you know, that is a part of the promise that they made to, you know, protect your culture, to raise you in your culture, you know, all of that. That was supposed to be, it was in the convention, it was in the rules of international adoption. And if they did not do that, then that is neglect.
Okay, I guess I should specify. So they did take me to like churches. They took me to concerts where people are Ethiopian dances, and I'm well versed in the culture. But what I mean by is like, how can you be raised as Black, right? You're not Black first, you're yourself, right? If they raise me as myself, I don't think that's a neglect of my Blackness. They know that Blackness is a part of me, but they see who I am first, you know?
If I can,
no, I guess I have a question for you to better understand it. You know, as you being you, and where you're at in life, and as you are just an independent Black body in America, do you feel as though the way that they brought you up, you know, and just being you, not necessarily attaching race or anything at you know, onto your existence and onto your identity, do you find that you're well prepared for life? Do you feel as though that, you know, your identity is intact, that you feel like you're okay in that? Because I guess that's what I would like to know the answer to, in order, like, I don't know, in order to answer that question.
Yes, I do. They provided me a lot of support to where I could feel whole. You know, there weren't a lot of Black kids in my neighborhood, but my best of friends were white, who were respectful and kind all the time, and they respected me as who I am. But they also supported me. Players, they would allow me to go to a different town and register and to play with them. So like they met my needs, but they didn't like, they know that I'm Black. They could tell my skin is Black, but as white parents, what they couldn't provide because they couldn't understand what it meant to be Black, they were able to, you know, give me those supports.
Well, okay, I guess, you know, what I would say is, and this isn't just like a way to like not answer your question, but if you feel as though did, you know, set you up for success, and you don't have any issues around being a Black man in America, being an Ethiopian adoptee, being Ethiopian, and you don't feel that there's that disconnect, I don't think that anything I could say on my end, again, and I'm coming from my personal, my experience where that stuff wasn't really prioritized, and it did jeopardize a lot of my identity and what I have to go through now. So I don't think, what I have to say would necessarily apply to you. And I'm saying that like respectfully, and I hope that makes sense. But you know what I mean? I don't know what I could possibly, how I could answer that question if there isn't that sort of issue for you. Does that make sense? I want to make sure I'm making sense.
I mean, I guess I'm wondering. Wait, I have a question. I'm wondering why, like, what led you to ask that question? If it feels like, you know, what they did was sufficient for you, and I think that's really great. I think there are, you know, I think it's tough when we talk about these issues of adoption, because we're not, giving a gold star to those like who are great adopted parents. And I think there are great adopted parents out there. I'm not saying there's a lot, there aren't. But it is few and far between. And I think I'm so happy that you feel that way. But I was wondering why you wanted to ask the question, like what made you come up with that?
Well, before we give the gold star, their parents at the end of the day, they still make mistakes. The reason I asked that question is because when I went to boarding school, a lot of the Black kids in my school who were on my athletic team, they would always challenge my Blackness. And I always wondered why are you asking me about my Blackness? Why are you not worried about just me? Like, why don't you get to know me instead of like trying to get to know me as Black so-and-so? So I just wanted to know, like, do I have to put up a front of Blackness to be Black? I feel like I should just be able to be myself.
No, I get that. I totally get that. I went, that's a struggle that I think I can relate to too. Just like some of my first times being around Black people, it's like, oh, well, are you even Black? You don't even say this, you don't even do that. And so, yeah, there is that feeling of like, why can't I just be Black? So I really understand what you're saying. Thank you for explaining that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry. Wait. Yeah, I think we have time. We're good.
Just
Okay.
one question.
Yeah.
So, I just want to say thank you very much for sharing all your stories and your vulnerabilities, because I can imagine I've been adopted, but yeah, we know each other. We talked about it. I grew up not far from where you grew, where you were adopted or where you were born, and I kind of know both sides of the stories, or kind of justifications and arguments on the parent side, and on here now, and listening from you, and it's been a wonderful experience. I just wanted to ask, like, about resources. Or networks, as a non-adoptee, people who want to be allies and to be part of your movement. What resources are out there in this area, in the DMV area, and if you could share like those resources at the end.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I'd start with saying Lidet's podcast on Spotify. Shout that out. If you listen, there's a couple of more than a couple of stories on there from adoptees, one from Italy, Ethiopian adoptee from Italy, and others from America as well, who've had all different types of experiences. And I think that's a great way to really just get to know the different types of stories that come out of adoption and the feelings that are, connected within all of them. I have this book here. This is called Lions Roaring Far From Home, and it is an anthology by Ethiopian adoptees, and there's many more stories in here of Ethiopian adoptee experiences from all over the globe, and it's a great way to get to know what kind of experiences and feelings that Ethiopians of this. I think the youngest is like 10 or 11 in here that wrote a note or a page. So again, then it goes up to higher ages as well. So this is a great book. And other than that, I researched adoption. I found other, old articles and things of that nature. But yeah, those are the few resources that I have.
Yeah, I think adding on to what Amsalech just said, there are other podcasts, out there as well. I would also say just I know she mentioned the book, the anthology, Lions Roaring Far From Home. I had the pleasure to interview their contributors and editors of the book. And so if you want to learn a little bit more about that, that's also on the episode. That's not to promote the podcast, I swear. That's just to, if you were wondering a little bit more about that. You know, I will also say I'm, I guess, in the process right now of trying to find some program, something where Ethiopian adoptees can connect with other Ethiopian adoptees or other Ethiopians in general, because I think that's the best way to support one another, to support healing. That's really going to benefit adoptees, especially when a big issue is isolation and identity crisis, and that's what's leading to a lot of these really problematic coping mechanisms that we have within our community. But there are so many other resources that are available for, I guess, more so for like Ethiopian adoptees, for whether it's an Ethiopian adoptee search, all those things. But as an Ethiopian, I think I'm trying to get involved. I think there's more in the works when it comes to that, but there's definitely resources in terms of adoptees expressing their true feelings about it and telling their story, and maybe as a place to start getting a more of a bigger picture of like what's going on. But it's very extensive. I'll say that. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Lidet. We appreciate you just sharing your thoughts, feelings, and yeah, please go listen to the podcast if you have time, we appreciate you coming here to talk with us. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm sorry.
Thank you, and thank you guys for coming and listening. It's like a really important part of awareness is just to listen, and I really appreciate it. So thank you.